So now, once we've mapped out the face, we have to learn how to shade and draw the facial features so we can kind of cut and paste them into the face. So here's my, I found an example online that I am going to work from and show you step by step how to make these facial features and shade them. To start, we will draw the eye. And before we even start drawing it, I just want to show you the mechanics of the eye and how our eyes are built. So we have an eyeball, it's a sphere, and it's kind of stuck inside of our skull, right? We have that huge eye hole. So if you feel your eye, you feel that indentation where your bone, your skull stops, and that's the hole within that our eyeball sits in. And so then our eyelid, right, our top eyelid and our bottom eyelid, they wrap around, like in this photo here, they wrap around that eyeball. And so usually, if you look at these other examples, you don't really see the iris in its entirety. So unless I'm doing this, where I'm staring at you with my eyeballs just straight, with my eyelids really wide open, you won't see my full iris. Usually the top and sometimes the bottom are cut off. So when you draw an eyeball, if you look at my example, I don't want to see, even if you have the almond shape here, because usually we get that pretty well, I don't want to see this unless you're drawing someone who's very surprised. And I don't want to see, and we'll get to eyelashes, I don't want to see this. We don't want to have SpongeBob eyelashes. So that is what I'm going to steer you away from for today in our demo. So in this example, the person started with a sphere, so start with a circle. Do your best to make a circle as close to a circle as you can. It's not that important, it just kind of helps you get the shape of the eyelids within that circle. And then the eyelid, when we did our demo about the facial proportions, we drew an almond shape that kind of looked like this. We want to give our eye a little bit more specific of a shape. So if you look at anyone's eyes, they have a little bit more of, like they have more intricate angles. So this is just one example of what an eye could look like, but eyes come in all shapes and sizes. And this is, if you're looking at someone, it would be the right side, right? It would be their left eye, but your right side. And so I'm going to give my eye, it has a point on this side, and then the tear duct is this little thing sticking out over here. And outside here is the kind of the, like the eye bone, so you can draw that circle if you desire. Moving to the next step, I'm just going to keep drawing on top of this one. Your iris would sit within this, right? Because this is the eyeball. Just imagine this having the iris here. Maybe I'll make it more circular. And you'll only see what the eyelid allows you to see. And then you want to draw your eyelid line this way. And eventually we'll get to this part. So the next step is to finish this eyelid. Bring this down. And then underneath, this is like, if you look at anyone's eye, we have this kind of puffy part and it's very rounded. So we want to emphasize that with a little bit of a line underneath, and eventually we'll shade it. Anything else in this step? Our pupil, we want to put the pupil in. And this person is going to be looking kind of off to the left, or to the right, if I'm that person. So now we'll move on to that last step, is shading. Oh, we have the eyebrow above. So I'm going to erase some of these lines out here so it's not too confusing. I'm going to erase this eye. I'm erasing the outside lines. Now I'm left with a little bit of my bottom line and my eye. The eyebrow, in our demo before, we started with just a simple mountain, a little mountain, right? That angle up and then angle down. Eyebrows are not made of one line. They're made of many, many lines, and those lines are our hair. So our hairs make up the value that we see in our eyebrow. So our eyebrow hairs have a few different directions. They start to go up, up, and then they start to go over to the right, and then they start to come from above and also from the bottom, and they start to angle just kind of straight out. So when you draw your eyebrows, I don't want to see all of your hairs like this. I don't want to see all of your hairs like this. I want to see some variation in your eyebrow hair, just as they are in real life. So if you see in the demo, in the example there, you see all these little hairs, and they're not super full. Like, it's not a super full eyebrow. It's kind of scarce. So we're just going to start with a few flicks of our pencil, and I'm starting going up this way. I'll zoom in so you can see better. Let's see if my light will be good. And I'll focus. Okay, good. So flicking up, and now I'm starting to go more straight, horizontal. And once I'm over the hump, I start to come from the top and draw some hairs from the top. And I'll fill this bottom part out. Come from the bottom, go up, meeting these hairs in the middle. This is, again, going to take practice. You're not going to get the hang of it in the first shot. And I'm putting a few loose hairs to make it look more realistic. Okay, some might be darker, some lighter. And now we're going to start shading. So when you shade your eye has shadow not only in your iris, which has dark value, but right under your eyelid, because, see, my light source is coming from above, my light is not getting to the very top of my iris and the white part of my eye, which is called the sclera. So there's going to be some shadow there. So if you look in the photo, I'm just going to shade right over, I'm hardly touching my paper, shading right over the top of my whole eye so that there's some shadow on the top of my whole eye. Just on the top. Very, very light. And now I'm going to mark out a space for the highlight in my eye. I'm just going to erase some. And I'm going to leave this little space. It's kind of right on my pupil, between my pupil and my iris. Doesn't really matter where you put the highlight. And I'm going to color around it more, make the iris darker in value. And my pupil should be the darkest of them all. Darkest. Okay, I'm going to shift this. And usually our irises have a darker ring around the outside of them. So I'm going to make mine a little bit darker. And I'm going to shade this a little bit more. And as I shade it, my lines are going in toward my pupil. So it's giving it a little bit of a pattern. Because if you look at an iris, some of them are really, really cool. And they have these patterns that go from the outside in to your pupil. So I'm leaving this lighter part toward my pupil and darker toward the edges of my iris. Okay, so already it has a lot of dimension, and we hardly did anything. I'm going to darken my tear duct to give it some shading. Now, the bottom eyelid, you'll see how it looks like it has this ridge. That's because it does. Our eyelids, getting up close and personal, have, right before our eyelashes, have this ledge, right? It's like three-dimensional. So I'm going to go back to this photo. You'll see here this ledge on both of our eyelids, but you can see it more clearly in real life on our bottom eyelid. And we want to draw that because it gives the eyeball three-dimensionality. We haven't really drawn it up to this point, even though it was in the example in the past 2 steps. So I'm going to add it in. It's this little ledge, and it kind of connects to that corner of the eye. And then from that ledge, I'm going to erase some of these marks under here. From that ledge will come our eyelashes. When you draw your eyelashes, again, I don't want to see SpongeBob eyelashes. You're going to say this is our eyelid. If you start from the right side, which is maybe the outside of the face, say our ear is over here, your eyelashes will be longest toward the edge of your face, and you're flicking your pencil from the eyelid out and up, out and up. Some can be more up, some can be more out. And as you get to the center of the eye, you want to straighten your lashes, and then as you go to the center of the face, toward the left side, you want to point them in the other direction. People have eyelashes that are all different shapes and sizes. So, for instance, my eyelashes are really short and you can hardly see them. They're actually pointed down. If I go like this, you can probably see them better. But they're very short and I don't have many of them. So, not all eyes will look the same. But in this example, there are pretty long eyelashes. So we're just going to flick. I'm going to start in the center and I'm going to flick outward. I'm not pressing very hard. I'm going quickly because usually the quick motion helps you make hair that is more delicate and hair-like. Because when you draw hair, you want the ends of them to be really thin. You want it to be nice and wispy and airy. And I'm not like putting a gazillion of them. I'm just enough. Okay. And now I'm going to add my eyelashes on the bottom. Really, really light. And sometimes these eyelashes also make up the ledge of the eye. You don't even really have to put a line. And I'm going to shade this a little bit more toward the corner, give it some more dimension, because remember, it's a sphere, it goes back in space. I'll remind you here, goes back and is covered by that eyelid. And again over here a little bit more. And now I'm going to shade the outside of my eye because this ridge right here, I'm going to draw some contour lines to show you how it moves in space, right? This ridge wraps into the eyelid. So if you look here, if you just pull your pencil and push it, you probably shouldn't do this, it's probably not good for your eye, but if you push your pencil against your eye, you see how this ridge goes in toward my eyeball. So this is usually the part, you can even see it in real life, that has shadow. And then you have highlight and more shadow, and depending on the light source, like it changes. But this, I'm going to erase these lines and we're going to shade it in. Okay, so I'm going to add some shading. Now, a lot of people like to shade and smudge with their finger. You can do that. That's fine. I don't usually do that. I used to, but I kind of stopped doing that because I don't know. I feel like it loses dimension when you smudge. Sometimes it adds dimension, so I don't mind that you do that. You are welcome to take your finger and smudge your shading in. Sometimes it's easier to do that when you're just starting out and you don't want to put too much pencil down on paper and you just want to add a little and smudge it out. I would definitely encourage that. I'm going to make this a little bit darker and dramatic. And this eyelid, I'm just gonna bring out more. It's kind of like this lid that's overlapping. I'll smudge it out here. And then the bottom of our eye gets some shadow to show that it's curving. And there we have our eyeball. Okay, my example that I just made doesn't really look like they're looking out. It kind of just looks like they're looking toward me, but that's all in little changes that you can make. Little changes with the eyelid, with, how you shade, with where the pupil is, with the position of the iris. So we will learn that as we go, but baby steps. Okay, so I'm going to stop it there, and I'll make a new video for the nose and